Hello, I'm Shmuela Jacobs from Israel, and I'm so happy to be here at JsPoland. I'm going to talk about static web apps, but first, just a little bit about myself. I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft, working with Azure. I'm also the founder of ngGirls, and we have an online workshop tomorrow with ngPoland. I'm a Google developer expert in Angular and web technologies. But first and foremost, I'm an ng mom. You may know my ng baby, Nadav. Well, he's already an ng toddler. I've got some news for you. We have another ng baby. His name is Asaf, and I'm coming back from maternity leave right now. So, static web apps. What are they, and why do we need them? Now, every talk in a developers conference needs a demo, so here it is. Since the talk is pre-recorded, you can already enter it here, jspoland.shmul.me. I'll start with a very short and simplified explanation of what static web apps are. At first, the web was very simple. The browser would display static pages. These are HTML files with images and links to other pages. The browsers would get these pages straight from the servers. We needed the ability to display custom data. So the servers generated the HTML files using logic and data, and these pages weren't static anymore. However, we had to wait for the servers to create the assets and load the pages, even when just a small portion of it was changed. Since the browsers and devices became more capable, they're able to run logic and fetch data using JavaScript. Single-page applications became the next great thing. The browser would get an almost empty HTML file from the server, together with the JavaScript files. The code would run, get the necessary data, and generate the view. In many cases, the application skeleton remains the same, and there are many static assets that don't need logic to get re-rendered all the time. The new generation of static web apps is more efficient. It combines different approaches of everything we've experienced so far. We have static assets, and JavaScript files are also considered static, since these are files that can be sent as is to the browsers. The application loads quickly and then adds the missing dynamic parts. Of course, the user can still interact with the application which communicates with the server. Oh my god, look what we have here! This is the new generation of static web apps. In this application, I'm using Angular, of course, and Azure Functions that give me the serverless part of the application and communicate with the database. The database is Cosmos DB, which is also on Azure. I'll host the app on Azure using static web apps, which is a very powerful product. In just a few minutes of setup, you get hosting with SSL and a global distribution, authentication and authorization, and a lot more out of the box. Static web apps pulls the code from GitHub and builds it with GitHub Actions. My code is already there. Let's go ahead and set up the static web app on Azure. In the Azure portal, click on Create a Resource. Now search for static web apps. You can see that it's still in preview, but not for long. Okay, now we have some big decisions to make. We have the subscription. Now what is the resource group? I already have one, where my database is. JsPoland. Now the name for the static web app. JsPoland SWA. Region. The region is where Azure will store the assets for the static web apps, and you want it to be the closest to you, the developer. But it's not where the assets will be served from to the users. Static web apps gives you global distribution out of the box. So the files, the assets, will be hosted all around the world and will be served from the location closest to the user. So we'll go on and choose what's closest to us right now, West Europe. Now we're going to sign in to GitHub to connect the repository to the static web app on Azure. We signed in, and now we have to choose the organization. It loads the repositories that we have. Let's look for it. I have too many. JsPoland SWA and the branch, the main branch. Let's go to build presets. Our application is written with Angular. The application is in the root. The API location is under API. And the artifact location, that's the dist folder, is not only dist, we need to add here JsPoland SWA. Let's preview the workflow file. Everything looks good. All right, close, review, and create. Let's create it now. And soon we're going to get the application up and running. Hey, our deployment is complete. Let's take a look at the repository. We can see that there's a new folder here, GitHub Workflow. It stores the workflow files, and we can go to Actions and see that the app is being deployed right now. Okay, let's check out our application. Go to Resource, and we have here the URL where the application is deployed. All right. So first thing, I want to add my domain to this application so you can go and check it out. I'm going to add my new record here. Select CNAME, host, JsPoland, and it points to, well, I'm going to need to copy the URL from the portal. Let's go here, and I always forget, no HTTPS. Remove this part, save. All right, so I have the domain set up here in GoDaddy, and now I have to set it up in the portal. Let's go to Custom Domains and connect this. I'll click on Add, and it actually gives me the instructions to what to do in my domain provider. Now, I'll type in my custom domain, jspoland.shmuel.me, validate it. Validation succeeded. Now we're adding it, and this will take just a few minutes, and it will be set up for you. You can see the progress here. Fast forwarding a few minutes, and voila! Our application is deployed. We can check it out now. We'll go to jspoland.shmuel.me. Here it is. So the main page is a pretty static page of links. But I want to show you some additional features that are not so static. Let's start with signing in. So you can have users, and you can let them sign in with various methods, with Microsoft, with GitHub, Google, Facebook, and Twitter. But you don't need to create a lot of logic for this. You get this out of the box with Azure Static Web Apps. So what actually happens here is when you go to the route .auth/login/ for example, GitHub, you can log in with GitHub. So you get out of the box authentication and also authorization. Static Web Apps gives you the tools to easily manage different roles and authorize them in your application. So I'm going to log in with my credentials in GitHub. All right, now we can see my username up here. And you can get more information about the user. How do you do this? Again, with a very simple GET request. Going to .auth/me. And signing out is also as simple as that. You can see that the link here points to .auth/logout. Now there's something important that you have to consider when you're working on static web apps. You probably have routes configured in your application. And routes are great. When you click on something, it goes to this route. But what happens if you want to go directly to a link? You will not be able to do this as is because we're still looking at the static assets. So it will look for an asset in this URL and will not find it. That's why we have the routes configuration with static web apps. Let's take a look. We'll go back to the code. And here under Assets, Source, Assets, we have the routes JSON file. Now in the Angular app it's under Assets because we need it to be available also after the build. And in Angular it takes the assets and puts them with the build. You can see that the routes that are configured in the application are pointed here to serve index.html. We can also use allowed roles to restrict certain routes, so you will get an error in your front end and maybe reroute to somewhere else. You can also configure authorization for API routes. Now this is really important because in your API you can also get the user data itself. And you're not going to send it by yourself from the application because then it's not very secure. But Azure takes care of it. When you use the API and you have the allowed roles stated here, Azure will add to the header the user information. And we're taking advantage of it in our API. In the API, when I want to get the user data, let's go see what happens there. I have several helper functions here, so let's go to get user from database. And it uses get API client principal helper function. This is the helper function that reads the headers and takes the information that Azure gave me to know who the user is. And then with this information, after I decode it, I can look for the user data in my database. Adding an API with Azure Functions is also pretty simple. Well, of course, there's a lot that you can do with functions, but let's start with the basics. Let's go to the GitHub repo and take a look at the code real quickly. You can see in the code that we have the API folder over here. It holds all the functions that we have. For every function, we have a folder with two files, function.json and index.ts. In function.json, we give the general instructions to the API. For example, which methods it supports and what is the route. So in this case, the route is hello. Now we'll see the logic of this function, which is pretty simple in this case, in index.ts. I'm using TypeScript also for the functions. This function is really simple. All it does is returns a body with hello world. So if this API supports the get method, you can go to /API/hello and see the result. But of course you can use the API from your code using fetch or other methods. Now I have another API method here that's supposed to show me how many likes I have in this application, and also another one that adds likes if you click on it. But nothing happens right now. So let's see the code of this API. You can see here that I'm using an environment variable called likesID. Where is this environment variable defined? We can see that there are more environment variables in this method. all these environment variables. Where are they? On Azure, you can configure these environment variables so they stay secret and you don't have to publish them on your GitHub repo. Let's go to the portal. Here we'll go to configuration. This is where we store the configuration, the environment variables for production and for other environments such as staging. We can see that it's empty at the moment. So let's add one of those variables. Let's give it the name. What is the name that we need? Let's go with Cosmos endpoint. Now, what is the endpoint? I'll go to our Cosmos DB and copy the URL to the clipboard. Now I'll go back to the configuration of the static web app and paste the value. Hit OK, and don't forget to hit save. I'm going to do this now for all the environment variables, and then the application will work fully. A minute later, I have all the environment variables in place. You can see them all here. So now the application is supposed to be connected to the database with the variables and update the likes. Let's see it. Let's refresh. And here, now you can see that we have 57 likes already. Oh my God. And if I click now on the heart, then it will update also my own likes. Now, I want to make a small change here in this application, but I'm not really sure how it's gonna be. I want to set up a staging environment. So what I want to do is to change the text here. JsPoland SWA demo app on GitHub. Maybe I'll just write something shorter. So I'll go to the GitHub repo, about component HTML. There it is. Let's edit this file. I'll just write this demo app on GitHub and save it. Of course, to save, I'm going to commit it. And I'm going to create a new branch saying fix title. Propose changes, because we're not committing directly to the main branch, right? We're always doing PRs. So I'm creating this pull request. And look at the magic that's going to happen. We have Azure Static Web Apps working right away, out of the box. It creates a new environment for us, the staging environment. And as soon as the deployment is finished, we're going to get a link to test the changes without affecting the production environment. So let's fast forward now, really quickly. And there it is. Let's press on this link and see what we have there. So this is another version of the application. And you can see that the title here is different as we changed. So we are going to merge these changes to the main application. So let's go quickly back to GitHub and merge the pull request. Confirm merge. All right. Now the main branch is being built and deployed again, and you can see the process here in actions. You can see all the workflows and get the logs of the workflows. Everything is running here. So we saw that static web apps on Azure is a very powerful product where you can deploy your application and get a lot of things out of the box. Thank you so much. You can reach out to me on Twitter or drop me an email. And of course, you can also open an issue on the GitHub repo of the application. I hope to see everybody real soon. Stay well and safe. Goodbye.